Sometimes you know you've just got to flip a coin when you can't decide left or right, when there seems to be value going either way. Both ways look tempting. But then you see on the map, it doesn't look as though you can then do a complete circuit. You've got to come back on yourself. So if you head towards the submarine, you've then got to come back from there to the point where I was just standing looking at the notice board, and then come in the direction I'm walking now. So sadly, I think I'm going to give the submarine a miss. And here we have formal notice that we are at the fortress of Suomenlinna, which was included in the World Heritage List in 1991 as a unique monument of military architecture, UNESCO's Convention for the Protection of the World Cultural and Natural Heritage Lists, cultural and natural heritage of outstanding universal value, which should be protected by mankind as a whole. Well, that'd be very nice if there's money available to protect it. And if somebody doesn't come along and decide, okay, the Swedes have had possession of it, the Russians took control of it, and then the Finns got hold of it when they gained independence in 1917. Oh, some tunnels to go through. Yes, let's hope nobody else comes along and decides they want to take their turn at being the landlord. I have been warned about these tunnels. Surprisingly light in there. Got to be careful because they get dark, very slippery underfoot, and even if you've got a torch, you can end up bashing your head. So, yeah. When the locals say, no, don't bother, you tend to take their advice, don't you? So I won't tempt Providence by wandering off down the tunnel. Not on this occasion. Of course, if there was treasure at the end of the tunnel, or there was something which suggested to me it would be worthwhile investigating, as it did look pretty dry underfoot, and the light was certainly making it easy to not bash your head. Yeah, I might have wanted to go and do a bit of exploring. Decisions. I thought this would be far more straightforward. We're in the great courtyard at the moment. It was the administrative centre of the sea fortress. Augustin Ehrensvärd was the founder of the fortress, and I believe there were two generations of Ehrensvärds who played parts in the design of elements to the fortress. This Ehrensvärd, either the father or the son, is buried here, right in the centre, right over there, which is quite an interesting tomb, because you see the classical Greek style helmet at the top and think to yourself, well, who's this? Is this Achilles? The prow of a boat sticking out the front. And I see the hilt of a large, very large sword as well. What a very curious design for an architect as opposed to a military man. But somebody decided he was a hero in his own right, perhaps, because through his due diligence in overseeing the work on the fortress. He was playing his part as a hero of Sweden. Okay. More cannons over here. Apparently we've got a selection of cannons. I'm not sure how to tell one cannon from another, to be honest. But we've got some 18th century Swedish cannons. And we've also got some 19th century Russian cannons. Apparently the Russians discovered that the cannons the Swedes left behind weren't as good as they'd hoped, and the distance that the cannonballs could be fired was rather limited. The Russians decided we need to bring in our own cannons. But they didn't get rid of the old Swedish ones, which was good. Just looking to see if there's a sneaky path heading towards the Summer Theatre and the submarine which was mentioned. And in that direction, which is where I thought it might be if such a path did exist, it just says ceramics. So no, there isn't a side sneaky path which isn't on any map, which links the submarine route to the King's Gate route. Of course, when we get to the King's Gate, we might find there is a way of coming back around a coastal path so that we can get a glimpse of that submarine, but I won't hold out too much hope. There's a nice little random shop there. Why not? And I mentioned there were 800 people actually resident on the island today. There are also a small number of other people who come across to the island from time to time, and you might see them in the video. Might pick some of these people up. Basically general maintenance workers. They are volunteers, people who've said they wish to do some labouring rather than languishing in a prison. And a unique aspect to Suomenlinna Island in this respect as well, serving as an open prison option for people who would otherwise be incarcerated and not actually being very productive in the world. This gives them an opportunity to actually feel they're making a difference, perhaps for the first time in their lives. And potentially, I guess, could lead on to a full-time job when they finish their sentence and rehabilitation. Okay, I'm sticking my nose into tunnels here when I said I wouldn't, but I couldn't resist. I won't go too far, of course, but just far enough. Luckily, I'm very short, so the warning I was given about the head height and the unevenness of the ceilings in some places, I don't have to heed that. Not here, at least. There are various tunnels, and of course I could just be fortunate enough to be walking down one of the better preserved ones. But again, the warning I received about the treacherous underfoot conditions doesn't seem to be holding true. Of course, nobody said where do the tunnels actually lead. Well, I can tell you this tunnel leads to a dead end. There is a window, though, through which you could escape. And apparently these tunnels were used in history for storage, as you might expect, but also for the protection of people who would otherwise be getting bombed. Thoughts of perhaps the Finnish-Russian war element to the Second World War in the 1940s. Perhaps Finns sought refuge during an air raid in these tunnels if they were already resident on Suomenlinna Island or were support staff to the actual soldiers who would have been based here. Oh, there's very loud honking. Is it a goose? Flying overhead somewhere, but I can't quite see. The trees obscuring the view. Where's that honking goose? Pretty little garden area. Right up against the bastion wall. And still more work going on. Looks like it's a major project which has been undertaken, but without enough people to actually perform the work, because this isn't lunchtime, this isn't winter. Why isn't anybody working to get the job done? Don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid. Let's have a look at this signpost and see if it says the submarine is down in this direction. Okay, those pointers just take us back to where we've been, unless the signpost is askew, because that would also make sense. But yeah, no luck with the hopeful submarine pointer. Never mind. Onward we go. Last stop, King's Gate. See what's between here and there. Apart from more mounds of earth and abandoned machinery and invisible workmen. Got a very important sign here. Under no circumstances are black-coloured West Highland Terriers allowed to use these stairs down to that small beach. Why black-coloured West Highland Terriers have been singled out, who knows? Perhaps there's one rogue in particular they want to keep away. Isn't this lovely? Even when it's not summer yet. Absolutely beautiful. What scenery. And the irony of it is, we have the beauty of this little bay here, but up ahead, on the top of the mound, we have a gun emplacement for cannon. Quite a contrast. Does make me wonder what the island looked like before all this man-made works took place. I wonder how much work was done to enhance an already existing landscape. And I'm curious, with all the destruction which may have taken place when it was created as a mid-18th century sea fortress, what was lost? Because I imagine perhaps earlier people came and thought this was a rather ideal location as well for whatever activities they cared to perform. Can well imagine people may have come here and settled it and lived from the sea, taken their food from the what we call the Gulf of Finland today, and perhaps would have had sacred groves and midsummer rituals. Or is that just my wishful imagination getting hold of me again? Perhaps I'm just shying away from the fact there are flipping cannon here. Not that they spoil the enjoyment from seeing the natural landscape and the man-made features. We've got something like a bunker down there. Unless, of course, these are hobbit holes, or maybe, no, we're in Finland, so it wouldn't be hobbit holes, they'd have to be Moomin holes. Perhaps this is where the Moomins live. Wouldn't it be nice to see a colony of Moomins? People dressed up as Moomins in the summertime, perhaps, when there are even more tourists about. Quite a lot today. And you get people in costume doing cosplay outside of these otherwise redundant domes. God, my imagination. Trouble is, when I get an idea in my head, I just verbalise it. I really shouldn't bore people with that, should I? But you never know, just one in a million times, one in a million ideas. I might just come up with a cracking idea. And if the chief executive of Moominland happens to overhear me, he might agree with me. Let's move in a Moomin colony. It will be great for tourism. If you are hoping to visit a Moomin museum in Helsinki, I'm afraid you are going to be disappointed, because the Moomin Museum isn't where you might expect in the capital. But the good news is that they do have a Moomin shop in the centre, and if I've got time, if I can locate it, then I might just stick my nose in there and complain about the high prices of everything, of course, and probably not buy anything, but at least I can say I've been in the equivalent of a Moomin museum, perhaps. Got some more warnings. Please don't walk this way. Don't climb the fence, in other words. And don't climb on top of the Moomins' domes, or the Moomins' homes, to preserve the historical fort below. This is a fall hazard. Oh, queues forming for lunch, perhaps. Oh, I brought my own snacks, so I won't join that queue for lunch. Facing into the jaws of death and discovering people's discarded trash. Well, I guess it's better than a lit fuse and a cannonball just about to explode in my face. I shouldn't really complain, should I? And I'm not complaining, because this is a wonderful day to be visiting Suomenlinna Island. You do wonder, if you're not from Northern Europe, if you're not from Canada, if you're not from the Northern Russian Empire, there's that thought of, God, how bleak it must be in winter. What must it be like? Would you really want to live here or have an extended period of time studying here as a student, for example, or a work placement if your bank tells you, oh, we're opening a branch in Helsinki? Would you be tempted to put your name forward for that position? You know what? On a day like this, I might be tempted to put my name down, because it's absolutely gorgeous breathing the fresh air. There are so few major cities that I've visited in recent years where you can actually savour the freshness of the air. And coming to Northern Europe, it's it just feels like you're getting some kind of therapy, and your body is going to thank you for it, particularly your lungs. And the myth of perhaps Finland being covered in a block of ice from September the 1st until June the 30th simply isn't true. And I'm just thinking, with the numbers of other tourists that I'm seeing, hearing and trying to manoeuvre around, and also seeing a full pleasure boat over there, or pretty full pleasure boat on a sightseeing trip. The ferry seemed pretty full coming from Tallinn. I'm thinking that come the summertime, you'd be falling over yourselves if you were tourists coming to see attractions such as Suomenlinna Island. I don't know what it's going to be like when I get back into the centre of Helsinki and trying to negotiate my way around the streets, and also some museums I'm hoping to pop into. A word about the museums, by the way, in Helsinki. And it's not going to be my usual complaint about the limited opening hours. What I wanted to point out on this occasion was the fact that when you're looking at your schedule for coming to Helsinki, and if you are a museum type of person, you might want to take particular notice of which museums are open on which days. Of course, that goes without saying. Also here, they have random days which offer free admission. There appears to be, for many of the museums, free admission if you're under 18, which is an attractive bonus for some young people. If there are under 18-year-olds who like going in museums these days. But also, there are museums which, for some reason, just pick Thursdays or Fridays, and they're going to be free museum days. Or if you read the small print, there was one museum I was noticing which was publicising its free day is on this day, but only between certain hours. For example, between 2 in the afternoon and 6, or between 4 in the afternoon and 6. I didn't bother making a comprehensive list of all these things because I was a bit wary that things could change, and what might be true in 2023 may not be true in 2024 or 2025. If anybody should be wasting their time watching any of my videos in the future, and then wanting to comment that I don't know what I'm talking about with these museum times. They went to the museum and they had to pay. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Information is only valid on the day it's published, because with unknown circumstances which may occur, suddenly that free day, which always used to be on a Friday, gets moved to free day on a Wednesday. Anyway, given that the cost of admission for the museums here tends to be in the 10 to 15 euro bracket, it may just save you rather a lot of money or offset your accommodation costs, because you don't have to visit Helsinki just like a cheap guy, the way I'm doing, with a cheap ferry day trip, looking to cut corners. You could actually splash out on a night or two in Helsinki if it's going to mean those days of the week save you 10-15 euros across 4 or 5 hostels, because those are the days there's free admission. So you do have to do a little bit of background work for yourself. Find out what the latest offers are. And of course, these days, as long as you've got internet access, you can go online, and if you can read English, you're incredibly privileged by Finland and other countries making their websites very often available in the English language as well as their own. So from the comfort of your office space during lunchtime, or from the comfort of your home at the weekend or in the evening, you can really do a bit of easy planning by checking the websites and going to the individual museums. And of course, there are the benefits of cards. You can get a Helsinki card, for example, which most cities have equivalents of. Nothing remarkable and new in me sharing that information with you. You'll know about it already. If you're going to a major city, they've usually got a city card which offers discounts on all sorts of things. Here in Helsinki, there's a separate system for transport as well. I think it's called the HSL card. That was the one which was confusing some tourists at the machines where we got our tickets for the ferry, because people were getting confused. Sort of HSL, what is that? What do I want? I just want to go to Suomenlinna, what should I press? Oh, there's not a return ticket, there's just a one-way ticket available. So what do? Do I just press that and then buy another one-way ticket to get back to the mainland? And if I already got an HSL day ticket, or 2 or 3 day ticket, will I have to pay extra for the ferry to cross over to Suomenlinna? And I didn't film it because I was scratching my head listening to all this and thinking, I just want a return ticket for the ferry, and that's all I need. But yeah, there were quite a lot of people just trying to get their head around the idea of what they needed to buy. And so many people were actually buying using a contactless payment system, which you may well be in the majority of people like that yourself. With those circumstances, they weren't worried about getting their cash out or their bank card out. They were just going to wave their phone at a small screen to make payment for something, which would hopefully convert into them being able to go through the turnstile when they were about to board the ferry again waved their phone, and a barcode equivalent would have been scanned, and all good if they've bought the right ticket and it's valid. But I could see the potential for people ending up waving their phones at the ticket machine, buying the wrong ticket, and perhaps paying more than they needed to for perhaps a 3-day passage using any and all of the transport systems in Helsinki, when they may have just needed to either come over to the island here like me, or they may have just needed a 24-hour version of the 3-day ticket they ended up buying by accident. And as I mentioned before, there was nobody working in the ticket office, and the only man working on the actual ferry who was there, in theory checking tickets, but he didn't check mine, he had a queue of people with their phones having problems using contactless, getting contactless recognition at the turnstile. You know, it's hard to say when you're a tourist. You don't know if this happens every time getting on a ferry. And does that man on every occasion have to face loads of people speaking all sorts of foreign languages, waving their phones saying, but I'm sure I just paid for the right ticket, but I can't get through the turnstile? I don't know. But it will be interesting to see what happens on the way back, from my point of view. I didn't look to see if there was a ticket machine, but I just had it in my head. I don't know where I got the idea. Maybe I heard it recently, or a long time ago, or maybe I read the information. I just got this, it's not a worry because I'm sure it will work out, but I just had this feeling that perhaps there isn't a ticket machine on Suomenlinna Island, so you have to do the smart thing or the right thing, which is buy tickets for both ways on the ferry on the mainland. Again, I don't know. I was going to say, if the worst comes to the worst, I'll plead stupidity, but maybe I won't need to do any pleading. The guy will just realise, okay, you're an idiot. I won't fine you on this occasion. Or, okay, you're an idiot. It's clear, it's written here in English. This is what you need to do, what you should have done. Perhaps that could be the way it is. We'll see. So here I think we've reached the King's Gate.